My life seemed perfect. You know, the kind of life people call the American dream. I had a great career that provided stability, and even more, I could afford everything I wanted, from a brand new Tesla in the garage to trips to the Maldives. But the main reason for my happiness was Anna, the woman I adored with all my heart. She wasn't just my wife, she was my world. Anna and I had been together for 8 years, and I was certain I knew her better than I knew myself. She wasn't just beautiful. She had an incredible charisma that could captivate anyone. People admired us whenever we attended parties together. Everyone always said, "You're the perfect couple." And I believed them. Our life was filled with shared plans and dreams. Every weekend, we'd have breakfast on the terrace of our dream home, planning our next trip. We traveled everywhere. Paris, Tokyo, New York. Anna was always the initiator of adventures, and it inspired me. Her eyes lit up when she talked about new ideas or our shared dreams. It felt like we lived in our little perfect world. I always told myself, I'm the happiest man on the planet. I have everything I could ever wish for. But as they say, perfection is just the surface. Something started to change, and at first, I didn't even notice. Anna started staying late at work. At first, it seemed like a small thing. She worked as a manager at a large corporation, and I understood that long work days were part of the deal. "I'm staying late at work today, honey," she texted me. I wasn't worried. It sounded completely logical. But over time, the late nights became more frequent. I began noticing little things that started to raise doubts. Her tone in messages became short, as if she didn't want to talk much. Dinners, which used to be our shared time, turned into evenings where I ate alone. Her seat at the table felt empty not just physically, but emotionally as well. One Friday evening, I made her favorite pasta. She loved it when I added a little extra Parmesan. But when I called her to say dinner was ready, she didn't answer. Half an hour later, I got a message. "Sorry, we have an unexpected meeting. I'll be home later." It was the 5th time that month. Something inside me started to feel uneasy. Was I overreacting? Was it just work? I tried not to think about it. I assured myself, she's just busy. It's tough, but it's temporary. But deep down, I knew something was changing, something I couldn't understand yet. If only I had known what was really happening then, maybe I could have saved our life together. But instead, I just waited and pretended not to notice anything. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, I accidentally came across Anna's coat. She was always neat, but this time her coat was hanging carelessly, as if she had thrown it in a hurry. I picked it up to hang it properly, and at that moment, something fell out of the pocket. It was a piece of paper. I bent down to pick it up, thinking it was a shopping list or a note. But when I looked at it, I saw it was a receipt from a restaurant. At first glance, nothing special. La Bella Notte. I'd heard of this restaurant. Elegant, dimly lit, the perfect place for a romantic dinner. Anna and I had always talked about going there together, but we never found the time. I looked at the receipt. The date was 3 days ago. The amount impressive. Dinner for 2, the order. 2 main courses, expensive wine, dessert. I read the receipt again, trying to find any hint that it could be something innocent. But it looked like a dinner ordered by 2 people who wanted to spend an unforgettable evening. Something inside me froze. At first, I tried to find a rational explanation. It must have been a work lunch. Anna sometimes meets clients at restaurants to sign deals. Or maybe she went with a friend. Yes, it's something completely ordinary. But the thoughts in my head were like an annoying noise. Why didn't she say anything? Why that particular restaurant? Why did she come home so late that evening? I took the receipt and put it on the kitchen table. I decided I would just ask her about it. No drama, just a question. That evening, I sat in the kitchen waiting for Anna. She was later than usual. Hour after hour passed, and I started making dinner myself. When she finally came home, her smile was as usual, but I noticed something in her eyes. A barely noticeable tension. We sat down to dinner. I tried to look calm, though my heart was beating faster than usual. I watched her eat, listened to her talk about her day. Her words sounded natural, but now I analyzed every single one of them. After a few minutes, I finally gathered the courage. Anna, were you at La Bellinate restaurant? She froze for just a moment. Her hand holding the wine glass stopped midair. She looked at me, and for a split second, something like surprise or even worry flashed across her face. But she quickly composed herself and answered, "Yes, I was. It was a few days ago. My colleagues and I decided to have lunch there after a meeting." Her tone was calm, but, as I thought, slightly detached. I asked myself, does she always answer like this when she's telling the truth? With colleagues? I asked, trying to sound indifferent. Yes, with the team. Our boss wanted to host a small thank you gathering after completing a project. She picked up the glass and took a sip without looking at me. Her response sounded logical. I even almost convinced myself that it was the truth. But something in the way she spoke, something in the way she avoided my gaze felt wrong. I nodded and tried to change the subject. But inside, I was boiling. Why do I feel like she's hiding something? Could it just be my imagination? That evening, I lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling. The receipt was still in the kitchen drawer, and along with it was my growing anxiety. This receipt was the first signal. I didn't know then that it would lead me to discoveries that would forever change my life. That night, I couldn't sleep. My head was full of thoughts I tried to push away, but they kept coming back. Anna behaved as usual. She wished me good night and went to sleep. But I knew something was wrong. That restaurant receipt wouldn't leave my mind. The next morning, when she was getting ready for work, I felt I had to do something more. She looked stunning. Neat hairstyle, an elegant dress she usually wore to important meetings. But her perfume, it was a little different. It was a new scent I hadn't smelled before. "Something special today?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She smiled and replied, "Just a busy day at work. I might be back late. Don't wait for me for dinner." Those words triggered my anxiety again. I nodded and pretended to be occupied with my own things. But inside, I had already decided to act. As soon as Anna walked out the door, I quickly got dressed, hid my phone in my pocket, and followed her. Her car left the driveway, and I started following her. My heart was pounding, adrenaline rushing through me. I felt like a character in a detective movie, but this was my real life. She drove through the city without stopping. It seemed like an ordinary drive to the office, but suddenly, she turned onto another route. I knew this area. Small cafes perfect for meetings were located there. My heart sank. I parked the car at a distance and followed her on foot. She stopped in front of a small cozy cafe on the corner of the street. From the window, I saw Anna walk inside and glance around. She looked like she was waiting for someone. A few minutes later, a man entered the cafe. Tall, athletic, moving confidently. He looked about 5 years younger than me. Anna smiled when she saw him. Their eyes met, and the moment lingered a little longer than necessary for mere acquaintances. He sat across from her, and they started talking. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language betrayed a sense of closeness. Anna laughed, her hand touching his a few times. It felt like I was looking at someone else, not my wife. I grabbed my phone and took a few pictures. The shots were clear. Anna, the man, their smiles, drinks on the table. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hold the phone. I could have walked inside. I could have confronted her right then and there. But I didn't. Something stopped me. Maybe it was fear of hearing the truth. Or maybe I wanted more evidence before confronting her. Instead, I watched as they laughed, exchanged glances, and spent time that seemed light and pleasant for them. For me, it was a disaster. After about an hour, they left the cafe. I hid around the corner and watched them say goodbye. The man hugged Anna. It wasn't just a friendly farewell. She hugged him the way she used to hug me. They went their separate ways, and I stood there, feeling my life falling apart. That day, for the first time, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my life might be a lie. But I wasn't ready for a confrontation yet. I wanted to uncover the whole truth, even if it would destroy me. It happened one evening when Anna said she'd stay late at work because of an important meeting. I was home alone, and my thoughts wouldn't let me rest. My heart tightened with anxiety. The restaurant receipt, her strange behavior, the stranger from the cafe. Everything was forming a puzzle I couldn't yet fully piece together. I opened my laptop and decided to check social media. It was instinctive. I didn't have a concrete plan. I typed the cafe's name, the one where I'd seen her with a man, into the search bar and started scrolling through posts tagged at that location. At first, it was photos of other people, ordinary moments of everyday life. But as I scrolled further, I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. On the screen was Anna. She was sitting at the same table where I'd seen her a few days ago. She was laughing, holding a wine glass. And next to her was that same man. They looked as if they were talking about something that brought them genuine joy. Their looks, their smiles, it all screamed that there was something more between them than just friendship. My heart stopped when I saw the date of the post. The photo was taken a month ago. A month ago, when I hadn't even suspected that anything might be wrong. At a time when I was planning our future vacation, she was spending time with someone else. I zoomed in on the image. A whirlwind of emotions consumed me. Shock, anger, disappointment, pain. Every detail of the photo screamed in my face that my life had been far from what I believed it to be. I sat in front of the screen for a long time, unable to look away from the picture. My breathing was heavy, and my head was spinning with 100 questions. Who is he? Why is she doing this? What went wrong? My mind desperately tried to find excuses. Maybe it's just a meeting with a colleague. Maybe it's some coincidence. But my gut told me otherwise. I knew that look. I had seen her look at me with those same eyes many years ago. I decided not to act impulsively. If this was true, if she was cheating on me, I needed proof. Something definitive to confirm my suspicions before confronting her. I grabbed my phone and took a screenshot of the image. I didn't want the photo to disappear if it got deleted. Then, I opened her social media profile and started searching. Nothing suspicious. Anna was careful, and her account seemed completely normal. Then I decided to check the man's profile. I didn't know his name, but using the tags from the photo, I found him. His profile was public. I scrolled through his posts and noticed that they often visited the same places. In a few posts, Anna was tagged, but at first glance, it could be interpreted as just friendship or work-related connections. But one post made me freeze. It was another photo from the same cafe. The caption read, "An evening I'll never forget." It was posted the day before Anna and I had planned a family dinner, which she had canceled due to urgent work matters. I realized I needed help and couldn't handle this alone. I called my acquaintance James Rains, a lawyer I'd met at a business meeting. "James, I need your help. It's about Anna." I tried to keep my voice steady, but emotions were boiling inside me. "What happened?" His voice was calm but caring. I told him everything, starting with the restaurant receipt and ending with the photo I had found. "Max, I understand this is tough. But if you want to move forward, we need more evidence." "What do you mean?" "I can help you organize an investigation. We'll hire a private detective who can track her movements. If there's something being hidden, we'll uncover it." I agreed. It wasn't easy, but I knew I had no other choice. Over the following weeks, James and the private detective worked together to gather more evidence. The detective tracked her movements, took photos, and recorded the times and locations of her meetings with this man. That photograph shattered everything I believed to be true. Anna was standing by the window of the apartment, holding a little boy in her arms. They were laughing, and the scene was so natural, so intimate, that it felt like a punch to the gut. Could this be her child? I asked, my voice trembling. Merrick, ever calm and collected, paused for a moment before replying. It's a possibility, Max, but we can't confirm anything yet. We only know that she spends a significant amount of time there and interacts with the child frequently. The mention of a child brought a new, more devastating wave of doubt and questions. I couldn't breathe. If this boy was hers, when did it happen? How could she hide something so significant from me for so long? Merrick reassured me that his investigation would continue, that we would uncover the full story. But the images, the details, they were all consuming me. After Merrick left, I sat in my office surrounded by the evidence he had collected. Photos, notes, timestamps, addresses. It felt like my entire life had been laid out, dissected, and rewritten into a narrative I couldn't recognize. I kept replaying the moments in my head. Her late nights, the missed dinners, her constant evasiveness. Everything suddenly aligned in the worst possible way. I knew I couldn't continue like this. I needed answers directly from her. And this time, there would be no dancing around the truth, no evading my questions. That evening, when Anna returned home, I was waiting for her in the living room. She walked in, looking as radiant and composed as ever. But I could see the faint signs of fatigue in her eyes. "Hey, Max," she said with a smile, placing her bag on the table. "How was your day?" I stood up, holding one of Marek's photos in my hand, the one of her by the window with the child. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but firm. Her smile faltered slightly. "Sure, about what?" I stepped closer and handed her the photo. "Who is he, Anna?" She stared at the photo, her expression unreadable at first. Then her eyes widened, and she looked at me, panic flickering across her face. "Muksh, don't lie to me," I interrupted, my voice rising slightly. "I know about the apartment. I know about Alex. And now I see this." Her face went pale. She sat down on the couch, clutching the photo in her hands. "Max, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is, Anna. Who is this boy? Who is Alex? And what have you been hiding from me all this time?" She hesitated, her lips trembling as she struggled to form the words. Finally, she looked at me, tears welling up in her eyes. "Max, he's not my son." "Then whose is he?" She took a deep breath, tears streaming down her face now. "He's Alex's son. I've been helping him with the boy because his mother, she left." The weight of her words hung in the air, but they didn't ease the ache in my chest. "Helping him? That's what you've been doing? Spending late nights at his apartment? Lying to me?" "I didn't mean to lie," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I thought you wouldn't understand." "Understand what, Anna? That you've been living a double life?" She broke down, burying her face in her hands. "I didn't plan for this to happen, Max. I was just trying to help him. And then we got close." Her admission hit me like a ton of bricks. "How close?" I asked, dreading the answer. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with regret and shame. "Too close." Those two words were enough to confirm what I feared the most. My knees felt weak, and I sank into the armchair across from her. "How long, Anna?" "A few months," she confessed, her voice breaking. The room fell into a heavy silence. I could feel the foundation of everything we'd built together crumbling beneath me. "Why?" I asked finally. "Why him? Why any of this?" She wiped her tears and looked at me, her expression a mixture of sorrow and desperation. "I don't know, Max. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted this to happen. But it had happened. And now, there was no undoing it." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat alone in the living room, staring at the photo of Anna and the boy, replaying her words over and over in my mind. She had betrayed me, not just with her actions, but with the lies, the secrecy, the erosion of the trust that had been the cornerstone of our relationship. I didn't know what to do next. All I knew was that the life I thought I had was gone, and I was left standing in the ruins, trying to figure out how to rebuild. Anna slept in the guest room that night. Or at least she stayed there. I wasn't sure if either of us managed to find sleep. As dawn broke, one thing was clear to me. This wasn't something we could come back from easily. Maybe not at all. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to try. That's possible, Mark replied. But without confirmation, we can't be certain. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat, staring at those photos over and over again. It was too much, 2 years of hidden meetings, an apartment, a child. All of it tore me apart inside. What should I do next? I asked James the next day. First, we need to gather more evidence, he replied. This might not be the whole truth yet. Mark continued his investigation. A week later, he uncovered more details about Alex. It turned out Alex had been renting that apartment for 3 years. This meant their relationship with Anna might have been ongoing for that long. One evening, Mark called me with news. Max, today I noticed another woman entering the apartment before your wife. Another one? Who is she? Her face strongly resembles your wife's. She might be a relative. This discovery raised more questions than answers. Anna had never mentioned any close relatives living in our city. Mark decided to follow the woman and soon found out her name was Clara. She was Anna's sister, someone I never even knew existed. One evening, I decided to see everything with my own eyes. Mark and I sat in a car near the building when Anna and Alex left the apartment. They looked calm, as if they weren't hiding anything. With them was a little boy. I watched as Alex held the child's hand while Anna laughed, looking at them. It was like a snapshot of a life she was living behind my back. At that moment, I realized my life was a lie. I still didn't know all the details, but I couldn't turn away from the truth anymore. Was this the beginning of the end, or just another chapter in my life? I had to find out. Mark called me early in the morning. His voice sounded serious, almost cold. Max, I have something you need to see. When can you meet? We arranged to meet at his office an hour later. I arrived early, sitting in a small chair, waiting while he prepared the documents. Mark pulled several photos from an envelope and placed them in front of me. The first photo was from the same location where I had already seen Anna with Alex. But this time, everything was different. In the picture, they stood outside a restaurant. Her hand rested on his shoulder, his hand was on her waist, and then, the worst part, I saw them kissing. It wasn't a friendly or fleeting touch. It was a passionate, deep kiss that left no doubt about their relationship. This isn't just a romantic dinner, Mark said dryly. Their relationship seems serious. I was silent. The photo spoke louder than any words. There was no room for doubt left. That evening, I returned home holding those same photos. My mind was racing with hundreds of scenarios. How should I start the conversation? What should I say? Would she confess? Or would she deny everything? Anna came home late, as she had been doing recently. She looked calm, even cheerful. I couldn't believe that this woman, who had spent so many years with me, could hide the truth for so long. Hi, how was your day? She asked, taking off her coat. I didn't answer. I sat on the couch, clutching the envelope with the photos. She noticed my mood and froze in place. Did something happen? I looked up and silently handed her the photos. She took them, and I saw her expression change. First confusion, then shock, and finally fear. She stared at the pictures for a long time, as if searching for the right words to explain. What is this, Anna? I asked calmly, though I was boiling inside. She tried to say something, but her voice faltered. Finally, she exhaled and sat down next to me. Max, I don't know where to start. Start with the truth, I replied. She was silent for a few seconds, which felt like an eternity. That's Alex, she finally said. We worked together, and yes, we had an affair. Those words were like a knife cutting through my heart. How long? I asked, trying to keep my composure. More than 2 years, she admitted quietly, avoiding my gaze. 2 years? Anna, 2 years. And all this time, you came home, looked me in the eye, and pretended everything was fine. She stayed silent, tears streaming down her face. I didn't want it to go this far, she said. But I fell in love with him. That was what I had been afraid to hear. Her words shattered every memory, every moment we had shared together. And the child? I asked, recalling Mark's words about the boy in the apartment. She raised her head, her eyes filled with shock. You know about the child? I know he exists. Is he yours, Anna? She turned away, as if she couldn't muster the strength to answer. Yes, she finally whispered. He's mine and Alex's. At that moment, I felt something inside me break. Everything I thought I knew about our life together turned out to be a lie. You knew what you were doing, Anna, I said, and you kept doing it. How could you? She cried, but I could no longer feel any sympathy for her. Her tears couldn't change what had happened. That evening, I left the house. I took only the essentials and left her a note. I don't know if I can forgive this, but we need time and space to think things through. In the following days, I received dozens of messages from Anna. She begged for a meeting, a conversation, a chance to explain, but I wasn't ready to listen. I thought I knew the person I spent most of my life with, but now I realized she was a mystery to me, one I might never fully unravel. Could I move on? And was there still room for forgiveness in our story? That evening, with all the evidence in my hands, I decided it was time for a conversation. I could no longer postpone it, no longer live in ignorance. Anna came home around 8 in the evening, as usual, with her bag in hand and a light smile on her face. She looked as though nothing had happened, as though everything I had seen and known was an illusion. I was sitting at the table, and in front of me lay the photographs Mark had given me. We need to talk, I said as she walked into the room. Anna stopped, sensing the tone of my voice. She looked at me, and I saw her expression change. What's wrong? She asked, though fear already laced her voice. I gestured for her to sit. She approached the table, her eyes falling on the photographs. Her hand trembled as she picked up one of the pictures. What's this, Max? It's what I want to hear from you, Anna, I replied. You know what it is, and I want the truth. She stared at the photographs for a long time, as if searching for words. Her hands were shaking, and she finally placed the pictures back on the table. I don't know what to say, she began. Start with the truth, I said, my voice cold though I was boiling inside. She looked at me, and tears began to stream down her face. Max, I never wanted this to happen. It's not what I planned. Then what is it? I asked, barely holding back from yelling. What are you doing in that apartment? Who is that man? Why have you been lying for so long? Anna buried her head in her hands and began to sob. It's Alex, she finally said. We worked together. It started accidentally. I felt lonely, Max. Lonely? We had a home. We had everything you ever dreamed of. How could you feel lonely? She lifted her eyes to me, and in them, I saw something I hadn't seen before, despair and pain. You don't understand, she said through tears. You were always busy, always working, always on your phone, always in your projects. I waited for you to notice me, to hear me, but you just didn't. I remained silent, trying to process her words. Does that justify what you did? I asked, staring directly into her eyes. No, she replied, sobbing. It's not an excuse. I just wanted to feel needed. Alex, he listened to me. He was there, and I couldn't stop. 2 years, Anna. You were with him for 2 years. How could you keep that hidden? I was afraid of losing you, she said. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I didn't want to lose us. She suddenly rose from her chair and walked over to me. Her hands touched mine, but I stepped back. Max, please give me a chance to fix this, she said. Fix it? How are you going to fix this? You have a child with him. Anna, is that a lie too? She began to cry again, lowering her head. It's true, but I don't want to lose you. I made a terrible mistake, but I still love you. Love? I asked, barely holding back my anger. That doesn't look like love, Anna. She fell to her knees and started pleading. Max, I know I hurt you, but please give me a chance to fix this. We can start over. I'm ready to change. Her words sounded sincere, but anger boiled inside me. Part of me wanted to pick her up and embrace her, to end it all right there. But another part knew that trust had been destroyed. You want me to just forget all of this? I asked. Forget 2 years of lies? No, she replied, looking me in the eyes. But I want you to give me a chance to prove that I can change. I remained silent. Her tears, her words, her despair, it all seemed genuine. But could I ever trust her again? Her words echoed in my head as I stood there, looking at the woman I once considered perfect. Could I give her a second chance? Was there still something worth saving? I didn't know. But one thing I knew for certain, our life would never be the same again. The next day, after the heavy conversation with Anna, I decided I needed time and space. She left for work, and I stayed home alone. Everything that had happened in recent weeks weighed heavily on my shoulders. I felt betrayed, empty, and exhausted. I decided to tidy up the bedroom, hoping that some physical activity would distract me. When I opened one of the drawers in her nightstand, I found things I had never seen before. A few envelopes, trinkets, and greeting cards. I hadn't intended to snoop, but one of the cards caught my eye. It was a small, colorful card, adorned with drawings of balloons and teddy bears. I opened it and saw a note written in neat, careful handwriting. To my dear mommy, with love from our baby. Something clenched in my chest. At first, I thought it was related to the boy from the apartment I had seen in the photos. But then my eyes fell on the date at the bottom of the card. It was from just a few weeks ago. Our baby, I thought. My heart began to race. I held the card in my hands, trying to understand what it meant. Could she be pregnant? And if so, whose child was it? Mina? Alex's? It was a question I didn't have an answer to, and that made it even worse. I continued searching through her belongings, hoping to find something more. In the same drawer, I found several medical documents, one of which was an ultrasound image. I stared at the black and white image, and my heart stopped. This is impossible, I said out loud. The document confirmed that Anna was about 3 months pregnant, but there was no indication in the medical records of who the father was. I called Mark, unsure of how else to handle this situation. Max, what happened? He asked, hearing the confusion in my voice. I think Anna is pregnant, I replied, trying to gather my thoughts. But I don't know if the baby is mine. Mark paused. If that's true, we need to proceed very carefully, he said. This could be an important part of the whole story. He suggested continuing surveillance to find out more. Mark was convinced that the pregnancy might explain her behavior and perhaps provide answers to the questions I was too afraid to ask her directly. That evening, I decided I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. When Anna returned home, I was sitting at the table with the card and the ultrasound image in front of me. She entered the room and immediately realized something was wrong. Max, what happened? She asked, looking at me. I silently showed her the card. Her expression changed. She stepped closer, took it in her hands, and stared at it for a long time. Are you pregnant? I finally asked. She nodded, but her eyes were filled with tears. Whose child is it, Anna? My voice was calm, but inside, a storm raged. She bowed her head, unable to meet my gaze. I don't know, she finally whispered. You don't know? How can you not know? Is it Alex's child? Anna began to cry. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how, she said. It could be your child, Max. I know I made a horrible mistake, but I still love you. Love me? I barely restrained myself. You don't even know if this is my child or his. And you want me to believe that you still love me? Anna sat on the floor, clutching her head in her hands. I know I've hurt you, but please understand, I didn't plan for this to happen. I don't want to lose us, Max. You lost us the moment you decided to betray me, I replied. My head was spinning with thoughts. How could I trust her after all this? And how could I deal with the possibility that this might not be my child? Anna begged me to stay, to give her a chance to fix everything. We can get through this together, she said. I'm willing to do anything for you to forgive me. I looked at her, feeling two parts of myself fighting inside. One part wanted to stand up and leave, to leave all this behind. The other, despite the betrayal, still felt something for her. The card and the ultrasound image lay on the table before me, reminding me that I was standing at the hardest crossroads of my life. Could I give her a second chance? And could I live with the truth, whatever it might be? The days after that conversation were unbearable. Anna acted as if she was afraid to even approach me. She tiptoed around the house, trying to avoid conflicts, but the tension between us was palpable. My heart was broken, but I couldn't stop thinking about one question. Could I forgive her? One evening, as we sat in separate rooms, I realized I couldn't live in this atmosphere any longer. I gathered her in one room to talk. Anna, I don't know how we move forward, I said, looking into her eyes. I can't live in this chaos anymore. She looked at me with despair, her eyes welling up with tears. Max, I know what I did, she said, her voice trembling. But you can't just erase everything we had. We've been together for so many years. I clenched my hands into fists, trying to hold back my emotions. That's why this is so hard, Anna, I replied. Because I loved you. I trusted you. But you betrayed me, and now I don't know how to look you in the eye without seeing that lie. She paused and took a deep breath. If it helps, she began, let's do a paternity test. I want you to know the truth. Her words caught me off guard. They sounded like a last hope, a proposal to find some clarity in this confusion. Are you sure? I asked, not believing she was willing to do this. Yes, she said firmly. If it can save anything between us, I'm ready. I stayed silent for a few seconds, considering her words. Did I want this? Did I really need the truth? That night, I slept on the couch. I heard Anna pacing in our bedroom, heard her quiet sobs. But I couldn't go to her. I couldn't hold her again, knowing this barrier stood between us. Max, what happened? She asked, looking at me. I silently showed her the card. Her expression changed. She stepped closer, took it in her hands, and stared at it for a long time. Are you pregnant? I finally asked. She nodded, but her eyes were filled with tears. Whose child is it, Anna? My voice was calm, but inside, a storm raged. She bowed her head, unable to meet my gaze. I don't know, she finally whispered. You don't know? How can you not know? Is it Alex's child? Anna began to cry. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how, she said. It could be your child, Max. I know I made a horrible mistake, but I still love you. Love me? I barely restrained myself. You don't even know if this is my child or his. And you want me to believe that you still love me? Anna sat on the floor, clutching her head in her hands. I know I've hurt you, but please understand, I didn't plan for this to happen. I don't want to lose us, Max. You lost us the moment you decided to betray me, I replied. My head was spinning with thoughts. How could I trust her after all this? And how could I deal with the possibility that this might not be my child? Anna begged me to stay, to give her a chance to fix everything. We can get through this together, she said. I'm willing to do anything for you to forgive me. I looked at her, feeling two parts of myself fighting inside. One part wanted to stand up and leave, to leave all this behind. The other, despite the betrayal, still felt something for her. The card and the ultrasound image lay on the table before me, reminding me that I was standing at the hardest crossroads of my life. Could I give her a second chance? And could I live with the truth, whatever it might be? The days after that conversation were unbearable. Anna acted as if she was afraid to even approach me. She tiptoed around the house, trying to avoid conflicts, but the tension between us was palpable. My heart was broken, but I couldn't stop thinking about one question. Could I forgive her? One evening, as we sat in separate rooms, I realized I couldn't live in this atmosphere any longer. I gathered her in one room to talk. Anna, I don't know how we move forward, I said, looking into her eyes. I can't live in this chaos anymore. She looked at me with despair, her eyes welling up with tears. Max, I know what I did, she said, her voice trembling. But you can't just erase everything we had. We've been together for so many years. I clenched my hands in fists, trying to hold back my emotions. That's why this is so hard, Anna, I replied. Because I loved you. I trusted you. But you betrayed me. And now I don't know how to look you in the eye without seeing that lie. She paused and took a deep breath. If it helps, she began, let's do a paternity test. I want her to know the truth. Her words caught me off guard. They sounded like a last hope, a proposal to find some clarity in this confusion. Are you sure? I asked, not believing she was willing to do this. Yes, she said firmly. If it can save anything between us, I'm ready. I stayed silent for a few seconds, considering her words. Did I want this? Did I really need the truth? That night, I slept on the couch. I heard Anna pacing in our bedroom, heard her quiet sobs, but I couldn't go to her. I couldn't hold her again, knowing this barrier stood between us. Anna sat alone in the silence of the night, her thoughts circling endlessly. The house felt empty, even though everything was the same. Furniture, photos on the walls, trinkets they had chosen together. But now, it was just the backdrop to her shattered heart. Sitting on the bed with her knees pulled to her chest, her hands trembled and tears streamed down her face. The words Max had said echoed in her mind. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you. They felt like a sentence, like a door closing forever. She buried her head in her hands and whispered to herself. How did it come to this? On the table in front of her was a pregnancy test. The packaging was open, but the test itself remained untouched. She knew she should have done it days ago, but fear paralyzed her. Anna picked up the test, staring at it as if it were something that could break her even more. Her fingers slid over the plastic casing as she tried to gather her thoughts. If I'm pregnant, she stopped, unable to finish the thought. Scenarios played out in her mind. What would Max say if it were his child? What if it were Alex's? Would it change anything? Anna stood and walked to the bathroom. Her steps were slow, heavy, as if each movement required immense effort. When she entered, the mirror reflected her tired face, her eyes red from crying. She followed the instructions for the test, but her hands still trembled. Placing it on the edge of the sink, her heart pounded so loudly it seemed to fill the room. 3 minutes, she told herself, glancing at the clock on the wall. Those 3 minutes felt like an eternity. Anna sat on the floor, clutching her head in her hands. Her thoughts swung between hope and fear. She remembered every moment when she and Max were happy, and every mistake that had brought her to this point. When the time was up, Anna stood and approached the sink. Her breathing quickened, and her hands were clammy with cold sweat. She stopped in front of the test, unable to bring herself to look at the result. You can do this, she whispered to herself, but her voice cracked. Anna reached out for the test, but stopped just a moment before picking it up. Her heart was pounding so fast it felt like it might burst. Was this hope? Or was it the end? Her tears held no answers, but one thing was certain. Anna and Max's lives would be forever changed, depending on what this test revealed.